What happens when the legendary Clint Eastwood, a Hollywood icon whose gaze can stop hearts, faces off against Whoopi Goldberg, a host known for her sharp tongue and provocative questions? No one was prepared for what unfolded that evening on The View. This moment went down in television history as one of the most intense and emotional confrontations, dividing the audience and going viral on social media. It all started when Eastwood appeared on the show to promote his new project, but the interview quickly turned into a battle of principles, dignity, and respect. The studio lights flood the view, cameras hum, and the air is charged with anticipation. The audience buzzes with excitement as Whoopi Goldberg, with her signature smile and a spark in her eyes, announces the next guest. Ladies and gentlemen, Oscar winner, director, actor, and living legend, Clint Eastwood. The crowd erupts in applause as Eastwood, dressed in a simple yet elegant dark suit, steps onto the stage. His walk is slow, confident, and his iconic squinting gaze seems to pierce everyone in the room. At 95, his presence still commands the space, as if he's still playing Harry Callahan. Whoopi, seated at the table with co-hosts Sarah Haynes, Sunny Hostin, and Joy Behar, greets him with a warm smile. "Clint, you look like you just stepped out of a Western," she jokes, and the audience laughs. Eastwood nods, his lips curling into a faint smile, but his eyes betray a hint of caution. He takes his seat, adjusting his jacket, and the studio falls silent in anticipation. The audience, from young fans to older admirers of his classic films, can't take their eyes off him. In the control room, producers exchange glances, sensing this segment could be something special. "So, Clint," Whoopi begins, holding her notes. "Your new film, Last Horizon, is another directorial project that promises to be profound and moving. Tell us about it." Eastwood, with his characteristic low voice, starts talking about the project, a story of an aging farmer grappling with the loss of his land and purpose. His words are deliberate but poignant, filled with the wisdom only someone with his experience could convey. The audience listens, spellbound, and Sunny Hostin nods, clearly impressed. But in Whoopi's eyes there's a subtle glint, a hint that she's preparing something more than a standard interview. The atmosphere in the studio is still warm, but tension begins to build as Whoopi shifts her tone. "Clint," she says, leaning back in her chair, "you've made so many films about heroes, about men who take matters into their own hands. But let's be honest, in 2025, some people think your stories, how should I put it, feel a bit outdated. Your heroes are always strong, silent men who solve problems with force. Don't you think that doesn't quite resonate with today's audience?" A hush falls over the studio. Sarah Haynes exchanges an awkward glance with Sunny Hostin, while Joy Behar raises an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by where this is going. The cameras zoom in on Eastwood's face, his eyes narrow, and his lips tighten into a thin line. The audience freezes, sensing the shift in mood. A viewer in the front row pulls out their phone to record what happens next. Eastwood nods slowly, as if weighing her words. "You know, Whoopi," he begins, his voice calm but firm. "I tell stories about people facing challenges. Doesn't matter if they're men or women, young or old. My films are about the human soul, about struggle. If someone only sees strong men in them, maybe they're missing the point." The audience claps, but Whoopi doesn't back down. Her smile sharpens, almost sarcastic. "Oh, I get it, Clint. But let's talk about you. You're an icon, no one disputes that. But some people say you avoid modern debates, about politics, about social change. You rarely speak out on things like racial issues or climate change. Why? Are you afraid it'll tarnish your legacy?" The words land like a stone in still water. In the control room, producers exchange nervous looks. One whispers, "She's gone too far." Sarah Haynes tries to intervene, saying, "Whoopi, let's get back to the film." But Whoopi raises a hand, stopping her. The audience is on edge, some whisper, some shake their heads. Eastwood sits still, but his fingers lightly grip the armrests of his chair. The camera catches this moment, and the tension in the studio becomes almost palpable. "I don't avoid debates," Eastwood replies, his voice slow but with a steely edge. "I do what I do best, tell stories through film. If you want political speeches, turn on the news. I'm not here to preach. Whoopi leans forward, her eyes gleaming. But Clint, you're not just a director. You're a voice of a generation. People want to know where you stand. Doesn't your silence feel like indifference in a world where everyone's expected to speak up? The words hit their mark. The audience gasps. Someone in the back shouts, "Wow!" Joy Behar snorts, but her laugh sounds nervous. Sunny Hostin purses her lips, visibly uncomfortable, and whispers something to Sarah. In the control room, a producer yells into the headset, "Keep the camera on Eastwood." The cameras focus on his face, his eyes burn, but he remains composed. At this moment, everyone in the studio knows this isn't just an interview. It's a showdown. To be continued. This story is just beginning. What will happen when Clint Eastwood pushes back? Can Whoopi Goldberg maintain control of the show? Share your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned to see how this conflict unfolds. The studio of The View is frozen. Whoopi Goldberg's accusation of indifference hangs in the air like thunder before a storm. The cameras hum, capturing every micro-expression on Clint Eastwood's face. His eyes, narrowed like a Western hero before a duel, and his jaw clenched. The audience, which gasped in shock moments ago, now sits in tense silence, with only whispers and the rustle of clothing breaking the quiet. Sarah Haynes nervously fiddles with a pen, while Sunny Hostin shoots a quick glance at the control booth, where a producer frantically gestures, whispering into a headset. "Keep the close-up." Joy Behar, the only one who seems amused, leans back in her chair with a faint smile, as if anticipating a spectacle. Eastwood leans slowly toward the microphone, his voice low but carrying the weight of decades of experience. "Whoopi," he begins, his words cutting through the silence like a knife. "I'm not indifferent. I just believe not every opinion needs to be shouted to the world. Sometimes silence is respect for those who are listening." His words are calm but powerful, making the audience hold their breath. Someone in the back claps, but the applause quickly fades under the weight of the moment. Whoopi, however, doesn't back down. Her eyes glint, and her voice takes on a sharp, almost challenging tone. "Respect? Clint, respect is when you use your platform to say something meaningful. You make films about heroes, but when it comes to the real world, racism, climate crisis, inequality, you hide behind your cameras. Doesn't that seem, well, a bit hypocritical?" The word hypocritical lands like a bomb. The audience erupts in whispers. Someone exclaims, "Wow, that's harsh." The camera catches Sarah Haynes, who looks like she wants to disappear. Sunny Hostin opens her mouth to speak, but Whoopi raises a hand, silencing her. In the control room, panic ensues. One producer shouts, "This is a viral moment, don't lose it." Camera operators scramble to switch angles, focusing on Eastwood, then Whoopi, then the audience, where several people are already holding up phones, recording the event. The tension in the studio is electric. Eastwood sits motionless, but his fingers lightly tap the armrest, the only sign he's losing patience. "Hypocrisy?" he repeats, his voice quieter but more dangerous. "I make films about people fighting injustice, paying themselves. I don't give lectures because I think people are smart enough to draw their own conclusions. And you, Whoopi, accuse me of indifference while sitting here putting on a show for ratings?" His words hit their mark. The audience explodes, some clap, some shout support for Eastwood, while others whisper in shock. "He said that." Whoopi momentarily loses her composure. Her eyebrows shoot up, and her smile vanishes. She quickly regains control, but her voice trembles with anger. "This isn't about ratings, Clint. It's about responsibility. You're an icon. People look to you. And when you stay silent on important issues, it looks like you don't care. Are you saying you do care but just don't want to risk your image?" Sarah Haynes tries to defuse the situation, smiling and saying, "Okay, let's talk about the film. It sounds so moving." But her words drown in the tension. Joy Behar, unable to resist, adds, "Oh, I think this show is already way more interesting than any movie." Her quick draws nervous laughter from part of the audience, but most remain glued to Eastwood, waiting for his response. Eastwood slowly rises from his chair. His movements are deliberate, filled with dignity, as if preparing for the final scene of a western. The studio falls silent. The sound of his shoes clicking on the floor echoes in the quiet. Cameras follow him, and producers in the control room freeze, unsure what to do. One whispers, "Is he leaving? Is he actually leaving?" Eastwood pauses, turning to Whoopi and the audience. His gaze is piercing but not angry, only weary wisdom and resolve. "Whoopi," he says, his voice soft but clear, like a gunshot in the silence. "I've lived a long life. I've seen wars, losses, changes. I don't hide behind cameras. I tell stories that make people think. You want me to shout about politics? That's not my job. My job is to show humanity. And if you think that's indifference, maybe you haven't been listening." The audience erupts in applause, but not unanimously. Some sit in stunned silence, others whisper, disagreeing with Eastwood. Whoopi opens her mouth to respond, but Eastwood raises a hand, stopping her. "I came here to talk about my film, not to justify myself to you. If you need a show, put it on without me." With that, he turns and walks toward the wings. The sound of his steps, click, 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 echoes in the studio like a final chord. Whoopi looks stunned, her hands gripping the table. Sarah Haynes and Sunny Hostin exchange glances, unsure what to say. Joy Behar, trying to lighten the mood, says, "Well, that was dramatic." But her joke doesn't save the moment. The audience is divided. Some cheer for Eastwood, others whisper about arrogance. Cameras capture every second, and phones in the audience are already recording this historic exit. Clint Eastwood disappears behind the curtains, leaving the studio in chaos. Whoopi tries to regain control, smiling and saying, "Well, that's the show, folks. We'll be back after the break." But her voice sounds unsteady, and her gaze wanders. In the control room, producers shout at each other, one yelling, "This'll be all over the internet in 5 minutes." And they're right. Clips of Eastwood's retort to Whoopi are already popping up on social media. Hashtags #Eastwood versus Whoopi and #TheViewMoment start trending on Twitter. The audience remains split. Some see Eastwood as a hero who stood up for his dignity. Others believe he dodged responsibility, hiding behind his fame. Backstage, whispers circulate. "Whoopi went too far. No, she spoke the truth." The moment goes viral, with clips garnering millions of views in hours, and media outlets begin dissecting every word spoken in the studio. The clash between Clint Eastwood and Whoopi Goldberg became one of the most talked about moments of 2025. Some media outlets praise Eastwood for his principles and refusal to play by talk show rules, while others criticize him for running from tough questions. Whoopi, in subsequent episodes of The View, defends herself, saying her job is to ask hard questions. But even she admits she might have crossed the line. This moment left many pondering. Are public figures obligated to speak out on every societal issue? Can their art be contribution enough? And where is the line between criticism and humiliation? Clint Eastwood, as always, left more questions than answers, but his exit from the studio became a symbol of dignity in an era of loud debates. What do you think of this conflict? Did Eastwood do the right thing by walking out? Did Whoopi have a right to ask those questions? Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to catch more stories like this.